As part of National Police Week next week, New Orleans police officers had planned to interact with the community at Audubon Zoo.
That Audubon Nature Institute announced yesterday they decided to cancel the event. Erica Ferrando spoke with New Orleans Police Chief Sean Ferguson today to get his thoughts.
The purpose of Blue at the Zoo was to promote positive interactive experiences with New Orleans police, according to Audubon Nature Institute and the New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation. Anyone wearing blue at Audubon Zoo would get discounts. But Tuesday, Audubon announced it was canceling next week's event, citing feedback from people in the community as well as outside the community who felt the event could be unintentionally divisive rather than inclusive.
I was disheartened as a result of that decision.
New Orleans Police Chief Sean Ferguson says Audubon has always been a supporter of NOPD.
So this, unfortunately, has pivoted to an ugly situation, but it is not the result of them not supporting us. They had to make a decision. We understand it.
We're terribly disappointed.
Melanie Talia is president of the New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation, whose mission is to promote NOPD.
We know that our community appreciates the men and women of the NOPD. And when it comes to Mardi Gras time, we'd like to say there would be no purple, green, and gold without the blue.
NOPD tweeted Wednesday the department is a model for constitutional police reforms. This as protesters across the country have been pushing to defund the police amid police brutality.
The New Orleans Police Department really is leading the nation in the constitutional reforms that the public is demanding.
Audubon went on to say in the statement, the institution understands the issues of ethical policing at the forefront of our nation, and NOPD is a nationally recognized leader in law enforcement reform.
And what we've learned is that the individuals, or most of the individuals who are saying negative things about the New Orleans Police Department and who has triggered this with the Audubon's Audubon Institute decision, are people or individuals who are not even from New Orleans. So we have to be mindful of that.
Audubon says it supports healing between law enforcement and the community and will consider other ways to promote meaningful community engagement with NOPD. Erica Ferrando, Eyewitness News.
We reached out to the Audubon Nature Institute hoping to clarify who expressed the concerns that led to this cancellation, but no one from Audubon was made available.